Good evening, sir. Today's first article is on conventional dissonance. So, Trump is deliberately alienating minorities of all hues in the re election bid. So, the Trump is deliberating means intentionally or purposely alienating the minorities of all hues in the re election bid. There are few events in US election politics that offer a more predictable denouement than the national conventions of two major parties, given that the presidential and vice presidential tickets for both are known beforehand. So there are few events in US election of politics that are more predictable than means the conclusion than the national conventions of two major parties, given that the presidential and vice presidential tickets for both are known beforehand means before only. Yet even this low bar of dull certainty was scarcely surpassed by the Republican Party as it reaffirmed its faith on a president who has shredded its ideological moorings and dug his heels in defending the record of his first term in office, including an impeachment on allegations of abuse of power and obstructing justice. So there is a low bar of dull certainty which was scarcely exceeded by the Republican Party, and as it confirmed the validity of its faith in a president, it has shredded means cut it into shreds its ideological moorings means place where boat or ship is mooring, and dug his heels in defending the record of his first term in office, and including an process by which charges are leveled against the government official on allegations of abuse of power and obstructing the justice. The convention culminated with Mr. Trump's address, in which he appeared to fall back upon the same lines of political attack that he employed against former Democratic rival Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election, only this time against Democratic nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden. So the convention reached a climax with Mr. Trump's address, in which he have appeared to fall back upon the same lines of political attack he employed against former Democratic rival Hillary Clinton in 2016 elections, and this was only because he was this time against Democratic nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden. In doing so, Mr. Trump conjured up once again the specters of socialism and globalization that threatened to creep upon the US economy should Mr. Biden prevail in the 2020 elections, warning that the latter was the destroyer of America's jobs, who took the donations of blue collar works but voted to ship their jobs to China and many other distant lands. So the nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden. In doing so, Mr. Trump conjured means implored to do something or cause a spirit or ghost to appear means he was implored to do up this, and once again the specters of socialism and globalization have threatened the creep upon the US economy, and Mr. Biden should prevail the 2020 elections, and the warning that the latter was a destroyer of the America's jobs, and who took these donations of blue collar works but voted to ship their jobs to China means ship their means like giving jobs to China and many other distant lands except America. It is unlikely that many among the party faithful who strong to the convention question his basic premise regarding the danger posed by Democratic Party to the economy, that there are jobs aplenty and the pandemic is a thing of the past. So it is unlikely that they may likely that many of the party faithful who thronged to the convention questioned the basic premise regarding the danger which was posed by the Democratic Party to the economy, and that these jobs are plenty and pandemic is a thing of the past. Nothing could undermine that assertion more than the fact that employment rates are still high and that during the time of the convention, more than 3,600 people succumbed to COVID 19 in the US. So, nothing was undermined for this assertion. The jobs were high even during the pandemic, but during the time of the convention, more than 3,600 people have failed to resist pressure to COVID 19 in the US. As disturbing as the false claims made about the economy and the pandemic were, more deleterious for the future of US societal harmony was the strident note that the president struck regarding racial tensions that have flared up across the country following several deaths of unarmed African Americans at the hands of armed police. So there was a disturbing and false claims about the economy and the pandemic, and there were more deleterious means detrimental or cause harm or change. They were more detrimental for the future of US and societal harmony. And was the student means a harsh or a raucous note that the president struck regarding racial tensions that have flared up across the country, flowing through deaths of unarmed means no African and American at the hands of armed police. Unarmed means not armed as police, leaving little doubt as to which side of the line he stood on. Mr. Trump said he condemns the rioting, looting, arson, and violence we have seen in Democrat run cities like Kenosha, Minneapolis, Portland, Chicago, and New York. So we are thinking about which side is Mr. Trump, but Mr. Trump has said that he was rioting, looting, arson, and there was violence to the cities of Democratic run cities like Kenosha, Minneapolis, Portland, Chicago, and New York. Little wonder that police brutality of the kind that was inflicted upon Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, has continued to foment anger in the streets of that city, and that Mr. Trump's regular allusions to mob rule by thugs associated with the Democratic Party is likely costing him that little support he might enjoy with minorities of all hues. So, the little wonder of police brutality, the kind that was inflicted upon Jacob Black in Kenosha, Wisconsin, have continued to foment anger, means here be anger in the streets of that city. And Mr. Trump, there was a regular mention or implication to mob rule by thugs means was associated with the Democratic Party, and it's likely costing with a little support he might enjoy with minorities of all hues. Hues means a color or a shade is known as hues. When November 3 rolls around, it might take Team Trump more than a vicious attack on mail in voting to prevent this bold sense of anger in multicultural America from drowning out its political ambitions for a second term. So the when November 3 comes around, and it might take Team Trump more than a vicious attack on mail-in voting to prevent the broad sense of anger in multicultural America and for drowning its political ambitions for a second term. So today's first article is about the America, the elections, and the Trump's alienation of minorities for all hues and what he will do in that election. And he has so many complaints about the people of America and Africans. So today's article is about the elections, what are the process and what are the effects and what is going on in America for the elections. Thank you.